Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crochet Tour YouTube channel. In today's video we're going to be doing another tutorial, and this is for another Bt21 character, so this time it's Van, so here he is. So as this is quite a small piece and it's only worked in two colours, this should be something that's quite quick for you to make, and it's basically worked in halves and then we sew them together. Instead of kind of doing rounds of colour changing and stuff, it's just simpler to sew two halves together in the two different colours for this pattern. So yeah, that's basically it. So the written pattern is available on my blog as always, so that'll be linked below in the description if you want to have that open at the same time. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into what you'll be needing for this tutorial. For this video you'll be needing aran weight yarn in the following colours: grey and white. And just one thing on this, I would actually recommend that you use the same brand for both colours. Normally I mix brands and I don't really care, but because we're sewing things in halves and then like sewing them together, you might end up with two different sized pieces if you don't use the same exact brand of yarn for both colours, so that's just my recommendation. Then you'll also need some scrap black yarn for sewing the details to the face, like the eyes and the mouth. Then you'll be needing some scissors, your yarn needle, your crochet hook. I'm using 4mm to go with my aran weight yarn, but if you're using a different weight of yarn you may want to size up or down. You'll need some stuffing. You'll need a lot more than this, but this is just to demonstrate. You'll need a stitch marker, and then you might want some pins to help you keep everything in place when you're sewing it together. So that's everything you'll be needing. So we're going to start off by making the head, which is worked in two halves, one white and one grey, and then we sew them together. So I'm going to be doing the white half. So to start off with, for round one, we need to do 6 single crochets in a magic circle. And just to be clear, by the way, the halves are worked in exactly the same way for both colours. It's just with one of the halves you're going to want to make sure that you leave a tail for sewing when you cut your yarn, and the other one it won't matter. But yeah, so this is round one, and I've just done 6 single crochets in a magic circle. Then for round two, I'm just going to increase all the way around, and that's going to get me to 12 single crochets at the end of round two. Now that's the end of round two, so we've got our 12 single crochets all the way around, and I'm just going to talk you through the next few rounds because they're just standard increases in increments of 6. So for round 3 you're going to do single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 4, 2 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 5, 3 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 6, 4 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 36 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 7, 5 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 42 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 8, 6 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 48 single crochets at the end of the round. And then rounds 9 to 13, so that's 5 rounds in total, just single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 13. So now we're ready to start round 14, and I'm just going to show you the beginning of this round because it is a little bit different. So in the first single crochet here, you're going to want to do 2 single crochets, and I am going to mark the first single crochet that I do just so that I remember where the round started. So that was 1 single crochet, and then you're going to want to do another single crochet in the same stitch. And then you're also going to want to do a half double crochet in the same stitch. So yarn over, then go into that stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull another loop through all of those 3 that are on your hook, and that's your half double crochet. So that's the first single crochet. You're going to do 2 single crochets and a half double crochet into that one, and then into the second single crochet you're going to do a half double crochet and then 2 single crochets into that same stitch. So that's that. So you should have 2 single crochets, 2 half double crochets and 2 single crochets now at the beginning of this round, and then for the remaining 46 single crochets we're just going to single crochet in each of those. So just carry on all the way around like this. So at the end of round 14 you should have 52 stitches in total all the way around, and then for round 15 you're just going to single crochet in each of those. So that'll be 52 single crochets for round 15. So I'll meet you when you've done that. So I got to the end of round 15 and this is what it's looking like, and I've actually been doing the other half at the same time, so the grey half, and I just wanted to show you the 2 different ways that we need to finish off the halves. So it doesn't matter which way you do for the white half and which way you do for the grey half, but I'm just going to show you now because obviously we only need 1 long tail to sew the 2 halves together. So I've got my grey half here, and I'm going to finish off with a fake single crochet just for additional neatness. So I've already cut my yarn, I haven't left much of a tail here. I'm just going to pull the yarn tail through like this, flip my work. I'm going to skip the next single crochet and go into this one here, pull the yarn tail through, and then go back to that final single crochet from round 15 into the front loop only from our current perspective. And then I'm just going to pull that yarn tail through like this, and as you can see that has now created this fake single crochet here, and it's just made the finish a bit neater. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to knot that a couple of times on the inside of the head just to make sure that's very secure, because we are actually going to be sewing into that fake single crochet, so you want to make sure that it's not just going to fall apart as soon as you start sewing. So I'm just trying to get my hook into one of these nearby stitches. I'm just going to do a knot here, and then I'll probably do one more and just leave it at that. And you don't need to worry about cutting the tail because obviously this is going to go on the inside of the head, so you won't see this at all. So one more knot. I'm just going to leave that there. So that's one of the halves. You need to just finish off with a fake single crochet like this, and that's it, and there's nothing more that you need to do on that. Then for the other half, all I'm going to do, so for the white half I'm choosing to do this for, I'm just going to cut my yarn and leave quite a long tail because we're going to need to use this to sew the 2 halves together. And you don't need to worry about doing a fake single crochet or anything like that, just pull the yarn tail through. And now we're ready to start sewing. So as you can see, this is the white half. This is the grey half, and the white half must be on the right hand side and the grey half must be on the left, because that's just the way that Van has the 2 halves together. And I'm going to show you how to sew these together now. So we're now going to sew the 2 halves together. And obviously when you're sewing them together you want to make sure that you're making it so that you're sewing the same stitches together on both sides basically. So obviously we did this extra bit here where we did some half double crochets, and you just want to make sure that you line that up properly with the other side. But once you've lined that up, then what you're going to want to do is just simply go into the front loop only of the white stitch, or if you're doing it the other way around, of the grey stitch, and then you're just going to want to go into the front loop only of the stitch on the other side as well. So don't forget that because this piece is the opposite way round, the front loop is actually what appears to be the back loop from this current perspective. So I hope that kind of makes sense, but if you just follow how I'm doing this, hopefully you can see what I'm trying to get at. And I'm just going to whip stitch around like this. So just like that. And when I have maybe 15 or so stitches to sew together, I'm just going to stuff at that point, so I'll meet you when I do that. As you can see, I just have a few single crochets left to sew together now, so I decided to add some stuffing at this point. So you want to make sure that you stuff firmly, and if you look at it from this perspective, you can see how it's going to look when it's finished, so that's really nice. We've got the two halves here, and then we've got a slight bump at the top here, which is in line with what Van looks like. So yeah, I'm just going to finish now sewing these bits together, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I've now finished sewing all the way around, as you can see, and this is what the head looks like when it's finished. So I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through to a random white stitch at the back, and then I can just cut that, and then we're done with this. So now that we've finished that, we just need to add the face details. So grab some scrap black yarn and let's do that next. So before I start adding the eye details and the mouth, I've just added a couple of pins so that I roughly know where I want to place the eyes. So you want them to be a bit lower down than halfway down the face, because if you look at a picture of Van, his face is kind of on the bottom half of his head rather than proportioned like a normal face would be, I suppose. So that's one thing I've just done to remind myself where I'm roughly needing to position everything. So let's actually get on with embroidering the details. Apologies for the lack of talking there. I was just really focusing on trying to make the face look right, because this is something that I always struggle with, adding face details, but I think I'm happy with how this looks. So I'm just going to weave these black yarn tails through to a random stitch, and then I'm just going to cut those, and then we can move on to making the legs and the body. Okay, so that is the head and the face complete, and now, like I say, let's move on to making the legs and the body. So the legs and body are worked in 2 halves as well, similarly to how we do the head. So to start off with, we're going to start off by making one of the legs, so you can either start in white or grey, doesn't really matter. And we're going to start by just doing 6 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's the end of round 1. Then for round 2, we're going to increase all the way around, and that's going to get us to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. And then for rounds 3 to 7, we're just going to single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 7, as we're then going to switch to working in rows. So I got to the end of round 7, and this is actually the end of the leg itself. So now we're going to start working in rows, as I mentioned, and that's going to create the body shape. So all you're going to do is at the start of each row, you're going to chain 1 and turn. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to do 12 single crochets all the way around. So I'll just do the first row with you. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we're going to start row 2, so chain 1, turn, and we're just going to do the exact same thing, so 12 single crochets all the way around, and you're just going to be repeating this for 10 rows in total. And the reason we do this is if you can't visualize it, when we get to the end of the 10th row, you're obviously going to have a gap here in the middle, so you're going to be able to sew together the white and the grey halves, and then we can add some stuffing at the top. So that's what we're working towards now, and that's why we're doing rows instead of rounds. So I will meet you when you get to the end of row 10, and then I'll show you how we can sew the 2 halves together. So I've reached the end of row 10 now, and I'm just going to cut the yarn, leaving quite a long tail for sewing. And yeah, you're going to want to make the exact same thing again, but in grey. And obviously now we're going to have to sew the 2 pieces together. So when you make the other half, make sure that you leave a long tail for sewing as well. This time you need it on both of the halves, and I'll show you why. So this is the grey half that I've just made as well. And basically we're going to use this tail to sew these front stitches down, and then we're going to use the grey tail to sew the back stitches down. It just makes it a bit easier, but it's not the end of the world if you forgot to leave a tail for one of the halves. You can work around that. So I'm just going to show you how I start sewing these 2 halves together. I'm basically going to try and use a similar technique to what I did when I was sewing the head halves together. So I'm just going to be whip stitching across like so. Obviously it's a bit harder here because we're kind of working at the edge of rows rather than working into actual single crochets, but I'll just show you a few stitches that I do, and then hopefully you can get the idea and finish it off. So yeah, I'm just going to whip stitch all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to use this grey tail to do the back, and I'll show you when I've finished that. I finished sewing both sides, as you can see, and I got to this bottom part here. Now I've just added some stuffing, and instead of cutting these yarn tails, I'm actually going to be using these again for sewing the body to the head. So basically, obviously there's two different colours that we want to be using when we're sewing this, just to make it as neat as possible. So we're going to sew it like this, and we're going to be using the white tail to sew the white stitches, and then the grey tail to sew the grey. So I'll show you how I get started with that. So I'm just going to keep whip stitching around until I've gone all the way around in my white colour, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing in grey, and I'll meet you when you finish that. I finished sewing the body to the head, as you can see, so I'm just going to get rid of these yarn tails because we don't need them anymore, and then I'll show you how to make the arms, and then once we've sewn those down, that's it. So I'm just going to feed these through to a random stitch, as I usually do. And then I'll just cut these. Okay, so now let's make the arms. Obviously we're going to need to make one in each colour. I've already made my first grey arm, so I'm just going to show you how I'm going to make the white one now. So to start off with, you're just going to do 5 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's the end of round 1. Then for round 2, you're going to increase all the way around, and that's going to get you to 10 single crochets at the end of the round. And then for rounds 3 to 8, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 8. So I got to the end of round 8, and I'm just going to add a very, very small amount of stuffing to the arm. And then to finish off, we're just going to do 5 slip stitches across to close. So I'll just show you that. And then you're just going to cut the yarn, leaving a long enough tail for sewing. So when you've got 2 arms, one in white and one in grey, then all we need to do next is just sew these to the sides of the body. I've already sewn down the grey arm, so I'm just going to show you me doing the white arm. So I'm just going to try and make it as symmetrical as possible. one final thing I'm going to do is just sew down a couple of stitches at the back and at the front as well, just to stop the arm from moving about too much. Okay, so I'm just checking that I'm happy with that. Yep, and then I'm just gonna weave that yarn tail through to the back, and then I can just cut that, and I can cut this one as well, and then I'll just show you the completed product. So this is what the finished van looks like. So yeah, quite a quick one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!